are reimbursement changes and challenges, as well as other challenges to starting an outpatient office-based lab. And we do need to be cognizant of these challenges. But the truth is, what we should be focusing on is the many benefits of an OBL, as well as some of the risks of OBLs. And the benefits have a lot to do with physician flexibility and autonomy and independence in the way that they can care for patients, and the speed at which they can get patients into the procedural suite, and the way in which the physician can adapt to the needs of the community because of the nimble nature of an OBL. And then the second benefit, more important benefit, is that benefit to patients, where there's, I think, in my opinion, an increased degree of safety in many cases in most OBLs, a familiarity that really helps some of our patients, especially those older and frail patients who can become very intimidated and distressed by going into the hospital setting, as well as just the overall benefit of having familiarity with your staff and the people these patients are used to seeing in the outpatient setting. Reimbursement issues are always key to the OBL setting, just like any hospital setting. You need to make sure that your reimbursements are enough to sustain the model, so to speak. Reimbursements have been decreasing in recent years. There's often discussion of large decreases in reimbursement or large changes, but they have not been significant changes over the last few years, in my opinion. We've seen a decrease by a few percentage points in various procedures each year. Now that does change. There are some procedures, such as AV access procedures for dialysis, that took some somewhat major changes a couple of years back. And I think as physicians, we just need to be aware of what these changes are to make sure that the reimbursement is still sufficient enough that we're providing care for our patients in the way that we think is the right way to care for them. Some of the challenges here is just being aware of the different changes in reimbursement and being able to sort of pivot to the needs of the patient that is in concordance with those changes. So, for example, in a couple of years back, as I mentioned, dialysis procedures reimbursement went down in the outpatient office-based lab setting, but they increased in the ASC, or ambulatory. So some physicians have converted and gone through the process of converting their outpatient office-based labs to ambulatory surgery centers, which has a different set of requirements and regulations, but in some ways that's maybe a good trend going forward for some patients or for some centers. So I think the real key is just being aware of the reimbursement and being able to pivot to make sure that the reimbursement is in concordance with a model that allows us to treat our patients the right way. And the truth is, having an OBL available to care for your patients really expanded our ability to manage some of the problems that were urgent in nature and couldn't be delayed until hospital elective procedures had reopened. And so, to be more clear on that, I'd say that urgent procedures and emergent procedures were still being done in hospitals in most cases, but there were some hospitals that were simply overrun with COVID patients and really had to scale back even their urgent procedures and delay them. That was something that, quite honestly, have increased the number of OBLs and increased the number of patients treated in OBLs, because we just weren't using our OBLs for housing COVID positive patients. We weren't using ventilators in the same way that the hospitals had to use them. The other impact of COVID, or the other way in which COVID really highlighted some of the benefits of OBL settings and ASC settings, is the fact that in a hospital, any patient that goes in for a procedure interacts with many, many layers of staff. So, for example, you go in for a lower extremity angiogram in a hospital like ours, you go through the admitting office, you interact with several people there, you go through a pre-op area where there's a whole team of nurses and many other patients, you interact with residents and fellows, anesthesiologists, cath lab staff, the surgeon and his assistant. So you may interact as a patient with 30 people for a lower extremity angiogram, even if that's done on an outpatient basis in the hospital. On the other hand, when you come into an OBL, you may have a single front office staff worker, a physician and his assistant, one nurse, and environmental service crew of 1 or 2 people. So it's really your interaction. Our patients who were treated in our OBL during COVID interact with about 5 to 7 individuals. rather than interacting with 30. And so during a time that was so unusual as the pandemic, having that degree of simplicity and sort of pared down support staff really helped protect both patients and staff from COVID transmission. So COVID really, these OBLs or outpatient centers were really a true advantage during the pandemic.